Hello everyone, this video is going to provide an overview of XG Core and a number of key betting concepts, which will include how to be long-term profitable, what is value, when to place your bets, and most importantly, how Football XG can help you find value in your bets and become long-term profitable. The first concept is the critical one, how to be profitable. In summary, if you understand basic statistics, the concept is actually fairly simple, but it's the application where it gets a lot more difficult. So let's go into some of the initial concepts, with the first being how to be profitable. If you only place bets where the odds are greater than the chance of the event happening, then you will be profitable in the long run. And this is the concept known as obtaining value. So most websites will give the example of tossing a fair coin. So in this example, if you're offered 2.0 on the flip of a fair coin, should you take it? Answer to this one is you should really be indifferent, because if the odds are 50% and the actual chance of it happening is 50%, in the long run you should about break even, so it shouldn't really be worth your time. Next question, if you're offered 3.0 on the flip of a fair coin, should you take it? Okay, if you were listening to the first question, the answer to this one should be a big yes. And the reasons? So if the odds chance is 3.0, that gives you a percentage chance of 33. And the true chance of a flip of a coin is evens, which is 50%. And as the true chance is greater than the odds chance, you're getting some value and you should place that bet. And this is the key concept to be aware of, that if you're constantly taking bets where the true chance is greater than the odds chance, then you will be profitable in the long term. But then we move on to, if you were offered 2.0 for Aston Villa to beat Brentford, do you take it? And obviously not quite as simple as the toss of a coin, but it should be approached in exactly the same way. So you need to work out what the percentage chance is of Villa beating Brentford, and then compare that to the 2.0 odds, which is 50%. So if you think there's a greater than 50% chance of Villa beating Brentford, then it's a good bet. If you think it's less than 50%, then it would be a bad bet. So the hard part is, how do we possibly know the true chance of Villa beating Brentford? Short answer is it's actually impossible to know the exact percentage. So unlike a fair coin toss, which is as close to 50-50 as you'll get, there's just so many variables in football, it's impossible to know with exact precision exactly what the exact percentage chance is for any given game. However, you can still get reasonably close to a percentage, and you should at least be thinking about it before placing any bets. So the basic mindset change is to stop thinking whether Team A will beat Team B, and to start thinking what is the percentage chance of Team A beating Team B. And I think that's a concept that a lot of people struggle with. There's still far too many people who today will just say, oh yeah, I think Man U will beat Man City, I'll place that bet, without having any consideration about the odds and whether the odds are actually showing value. Some people may indirectly be considering the odds, and they'll look and say, oh yeah, Villa to beat Brentford, 2.0 there, that sounds reasonable, I'll place that. But if you really want to take trading and betting seriously, you need to start thinking in a lot more detail around, is this 2.0 actually a good bet, or should I be looking at alternatives or even potentially laying it? So you may think that Villa will beat Brentford, but if the odds are showing poor value, it could actually make sense to lay Villa. I know that may sound counterintuitive, but the key concept is that price is key. And if you're not getting a good price, then you shouldn't be placing a bet. In terms of mindset change, say start thinking in terms of percentages. In this example, think if Villa were to play Brentford in this game 100 times, how often do you think Villa will beat Brentford? If you think Villa will win, say, greater than 50% or roughly 60 to 70%, then you're getting good value because the odds of 2.0 equals 50%, and you think the chance of them winning is in 60 to 70% range, then you're doing well. But conversely, if you think the chance of Villa winning, they may win like 30 to 40 games out of 100, then obviously that's a 30-40% chance. And versus the odds of 50%, you'd actually be getting poor value. So that's the key thing to think of. If you're still thinking, I have no idea how often Villa should beat Brentford, then this is where footballxg.com can help. So we predict the percentage chance for all games across 30 major leagues to allow a quick initial assessment on whether the odds are providing value. So, how do we do this? So first we calculate something called XG Predict. In this example, you can see that for Villa versus Brentford, we've predicted 1.1 versus 0.9. And obviously you may be thinking, ooh, you can't score 1.1 or you can't score 0.9 goals. So think of it in terms of if these teams played 100 times. In this example, we'd expect Villa to score 110 goals, which is 1.1, and we'd expect Brentford to score 90 goals, which is 0.9 per game. So the XG Predict is based off a proprietary model which is predominantly driven by actual expected goals over the short, medium term. And then once we have this XG Predict, the XG Predict number is then run through an advanced Poisson model to calculate a percentage chance of each outcome occurring. So here, the XG Predict has given an overall percentage chance of 42% of Villa winning this game. And once we have the percentage chance, it can then be compared to the actual odds to assess whether there is value. So the odds at the actual time of the game were 2.06 for Villa to win, which equates to a 49% chance, which is just 1 divided by 2.06. And then also our model has created a chance prediction of 42%. And as the XG chance is less than the odds chance, we are showing a negative 7% value, which is just the 42 minus the 49. And for anyone familiar with the spreadsheets, you will have seen this before, and that's how that number that's shown next to the XG Predict is calculated, and that's the minus 7 that agrees to the value shown above. So back to the original question, should you bet on Villa to beat Brentford? And in this example, no, as the odds suggest they have a 49% chance, but we calculated they only have a 42% chance. This suggests negative value. And as we keep saying, if there's no value, there should be no bet. However, there are a number of caveats to discuss. First, Brentford are new to the Premier League, so with limited data, the accuracy of the models are more liable to inefficiencies. So the actual percentage chance for Brentford will be a lot wider spread rather than just the 1% figure that was provided. So as for teams with a lot longer records, we can be a lot more accurate in our predictions of how they will actually do on any given game. So also, the model does not reflect all possible inputs, e.g. team news, injuries, players saving themselves for a big European game. So for example, an injury to Harry Kane the day before a Spurs game will not be factored into the prediction. And as Kane contributes a lot of goals and assists, the predicted XG would need to be reduced as he will likely be replaced with someone with inferior goals. For some teams, like Man City, an injury has little impact as they have equivalent replacements for nearly every position. So the key point to emphasize is the value prediction should not be the end point in deciding whether to place a bet. Always dig deeper and always look for a reason not to place a bet. How to use XG Core. We suggest 2 key ways. First, for example, you have a strong belief a certain outcome will occur, e.g. Villa will beat Brentford, but you're not sure if the odds represent value. By looking at the spreadsheet, you can quickly gain a good understanding if the odds being offered appear to show value. As in here, the minus 7% gives you a good indication that it's showing limited value to bet on Villa. If not, the outcome may still occur, but if you consistently bet without value, you will lose money over the long term. The second key way to use the spreadsheet is to look at the spreadsheet and filter for games which have a positive value in the value versus Poisson section, as shown in the section on the right. Here, all games with greater than 10% have been filtered. And these are games which appear to show value in the odds, and is a good starting point for getting an initial list of games for further analysis. So another concept to quickly discuss is, should I place my bet at kickoff? So this is talking about when should we actually place our bets. If you're one of these people who places their bets just before kickoff, you're likely to be a long-term unprofitable trader. And the reason is the kickoff price is when the markets are at their most efficient and reflect all available information. As such, the kickoff price is seen as the closest probability to the actual chance of the event occurring. So in the coin toss example, what would be the kickoff price? If you're about to say 2.0 or 50%, you're close, but in fact it'll be more like 1.95, which is about 51.3%, and the difference is the bookmaker margin, and that's how they make their money. And it's identical to how a casino operates. They offer odds slightly worse than the true chance of the event happening, and if you bet long enough, this edge will gradually eat away your bankroll. And this goes back to the original point that you should only bet with value. So if you take 1 point from this entire video, it should be only bet with value. And I keep hammering it home, but that is such a core concept to be aware of. Okay, so the best time to find value is when the markets are at their most inefficient. And when are they at their most inefficient? At the earliest possible point before all the smart money moves to the markets. So in summary, the earlier you can get your trades on, the better. And this links in nicely to the next concept of how do I know if I've got value. So as just mentioned, the kickoff odds are deemed as the fairest odds in terms of the actual chance of the event occurring. So you can compare the odds you traded versus the closing price odds. And if you're constantly getting odds higher than the closing odds, you will be a profitable trader in the long run. And this is the concept that we said at the very start of the video. And that should be your number one aim in all your trading, is getting odds higher than the closing price. We've largely talked about XG Predict and the value predictions, but there are other sections of the spreadsheets which include a full range of historical statistics. And I'll quickly go through those now. So there is a section which provides stats on 0-0s and who scored first, including last 10 game form and points. There's also sections showing how teams have performed in the last 10, 5 and 3 games, looking at both goals scored and expected goals. And this is a key differentiator for Football XG. We include a lot of stats on expected goals. Another point to mention is the averages are based on home results for the team at home and the away results for the away team. And then statistics are further separated into first half, second half and full game. For example, greater than 1.5 plus is the number of times in the last 10 games where a team has scored greater than 2 goals in the first half. And the Fields tab provides more details on each individual field. To summarize, always bet with value. If there's no value, there should be no bet. Always record your bets against closing prices. Again, if you're constantly beating the closing price, you will be profitable long term. And finally, dig deep. So the more depth you go into in each game, the more confident you'll be on each trade you'll place. Finally, betting trading is extremely high risk. Even if you do everything perfectly, due to the concept of variance, you could still lose significantly in the short term. Think in terms of being offered 3.0 on heads and then hitting a run of 10 plus tails in a row. You're betting with value, doing everything right, but still losing over the short term, and that's where bank management is key. And finally, only bet where you can afford to lose. Linking to the above point, trading is high risk, and even if you do everything perfectly, you can still lose money. If you want more details on what we have to offer at Football XG, please visit our website at footballxg.com/members, where we have a full range of subscription options available, including some that are for free. And as always, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, and you can contact us via Twitter at football_XG or via the contact page on our website.